Guys, we're here. The galaxy's biggest troll, Trazyn, again, don't know how to pronounce it. Warhammer 40K Necrons lore by WesHammer. Let's go.
Every single character in 40K has a dedicated
fan
base on one side and an even more dedicated group of haters on the other. No matter who you bring up in a comment section, you're gonna get people who say that they're the best thing ever, and another group of people that thinks they're the avatar of mediocrity. Except, of course,
mediocrity.
Talking about Trazyn the Infinite. Somehow the galaxy's biggest troll is also Warhammer 40K's least contentious character. Sentiment on the whole with this guy seems to be overwhelmingly positive,
okay,
and it makes sense. He's an eccentric collector determined to preserve the universe's history by liberating artifacts of impossible worth from lesser
That's one of the Sisters of Battle, right?
Can't appreciate.
Oh wait, that's Magic the Gathering. Magic the Gathering mentioned. That's a Magic the Gathering mentioned.
Here's what happens when you take Indiana Jones, Marvel's The Collector, and Ash Ketchum, merge them all into one, and download their consciousness into an 8-foot-tall, 65-million-year-old metal skeleton. His antics are hilarious, admirable, and admittedly, a little bit disturbing. But who exactly is he, and where did he come from? What is he all about?
Oh, that's cool.
Today we're going to get to the bottom of that and learn all about 40K's most beloved character. But first, a quick shout out to this video's sponsor, and then we're going to dive in.
But what's there to hate about the Sisters of Battle? That's what they were called, right? They're so cool. What's there to hate about them?
Head first into the...
They're probably like racist or something.
Grimdark. A lot of you in the comments have been asking me where I get these super dope
I love him because he's literally just written during the 1900s and 40K with wanting to preserve everything by stealing it based.
They come from this really cool company called Into the AM.
Romanian. So he's Romanian.
Sponsor of this week's video. Not only are their designs super unique and colorful, but they're also crazy comfortable too.
Oh, merch.
They feel thicker than a normal t-shirt and they're crazy soft. I've been wearing their shirts for about 6 months.
I'm not gonna lie.
And so far, even after having run them through the wash multiple times, there's been no shrinkage and the colors haven't faded at all. My absolute favorite part about them is that they're actually longer than a normal t-shirt. And as a guy with a big chest and a long torso, I super appreciate that. I can't tell you how many times I've had a shirt that I really like.
Yeah, me too, bro. Sure.
After a couple of times through the wash, it ends up shrinking, and then every single time I lift my arms up, it just comes up past my belly button. So does Into the AM shirts pass the West test?
Bye-bye, lag. Thanks for stopping by. Oh, look at that.
Perfection. Not only do they look amazing and are super comfortable, but they're actually really affordable too. If you're like me and you're a fan of really cool graphic tees, you can get 3 of them bundled together for $60. But if you like something a little bit more professional looking,
doesn't that happen even if you're
their basic tees bundled together?
That happens to me though when I lift up my arms, but I'm not.
$49.95, which is a great deal on its own. But if you use my link down in the description
of the design shirt looks AI generated.
WesHammer at checkout.
That's only my opinion though. That's what. Okay, I was thinking about that, but I didn't want to be the one to say it. I just didn't want to be the one to mention it. I don't think they are, but it does. Some of them kind of do give off that vibe a little bit. I do agree. I don't think they are though.
Money on some amazing shirts. So go
but yeah, I can absolutely see where you're coming from. I just didn't want to be the one to say it.
Pick yourself out something awesome. Thanks again to Into the AM for sponsoring today's video. And with that out of the way, let's get into the Grimdark. The war-torn galaxy of the 41st millennium always seems to be one step removed from utter and total annihilation. The squabbling of its various species and the influence of the dark gods constantly poised to burn away everything that ever was. In such an event, new species will inevitably rise from the ashes of what came before. They will be inheriting a galaxy that bore witness to the impossible. Countless marvels,
Destiny 2, that's Destiny 2.
It's gotta be Destiny 2, right?
The Witness.
They will, however, be ignorant of all of this and will be doomed to repeat the mistakes
of their forebears. This is probably just Warhammer. That looks so cool.
That is.
That's like one of the pyramids from Destiny 2. If that's not from Destiny 2, that's one of the ships. The Dorito chips from Destiny 2, which is really cool.
Unless a certain metallic kleptomaniac named Trazyn is able to succeed in his lofty mission. You see, Trazyn is the self-described archivist of the Solemnace Galleries, and his ultimate goal is to preserve the history of the Milky Way. He believes there will come a time when the lesser species will inevitably destroy themselves, and that his ultimate mission is to preserve what was for whatever comes after. Whether that be the Necron dynasties themselves, or whatever new species climbs its way out of the primordial ooze. Even though he's an incredibly powerful and influential Necron lord that controls legions of his own soldiers, he's more of a researcher and a historian.
I love the designs for the Necrons, dude. They all look so cool. I love like the robo-bot
it's not necessarily out of the desire for conquest, but more as a byproduct of the necessity.
Cool. They sort of remind me of like the exterminators.
He's a rather complicated individual and stands
American
apart
and
from
therefore
most of
pronouncing it wrong. Just saying, oh, true.
Especially when compared to the other Necron lords, who seem to be more fixated in taking back the galaxy from all of these newfound squatters that have shown up since they went to sleep. When it comes to Trazyn, we can respect his pursuits as a noble cause. It's important to preserve history. But at the same time, he's also a little bit of a kleptomaniac. Basically just showing—
What does that mean? I've heard that so many times in like cryptocurrency, whenever cryptocurrency is like brought up. What does that mean?
Up to take whatever the hell he wants under the guise of some kind of noble mission. He doesn't like to use the word steal. He doesn't steal anything. He liberates relics of antiquity, something that previous owners don't ever really seem to appreciate. His antics have gotten him banned from numerous Necron worlds, and he has very few contacts left that wouldn't immediately—
I love the how in Warhammer that's just the thing people can do. Like there's just so many worlds that people just start banning you, not even from like establishments or stores, or if you're just like such like a terrorist that you're just like banned from certain countries. No, you're just banned from the world. Yeah, no, you can never come back to this like whole world. Just not even like a place, not even like a singular place. No, they all. It's just the entire like whole world. You're not supposed to go there anymore.
Immediately kill him on
repeatedly
sight.
being unable to resist or steal items.
Times the other Necron lords have sent assassins after him.
Okay, that's a kleptomania.
Unfortunately for them,
look at that, dude. They look so cool.
His remarkable cunning and the use of
compulsory stealing. Yeah, okay, got it.
He never really stays destroyed for very long. The act of
completely
being
nothing about Warhammer. I'm just here to chill.
Minor annoyance.
Let's go.
The success of his mission is paramount, and he justifies his actions by claiming if he was able to find some way to explain himself to the lesser species.
They look the same, boring. They do not look boring, brother.
He was trying to do. But how would he even go about doing this? How do you explain to humanity and other species like them that their lifespans are so finite that to an immortal being like Trazyn, the purpose of their existence basically boils down to a handful of artifacts or important individuals that they should be
looks like what's that one boss, the Cabal boss from Destiny 2, from the first Destiny 2 campaign? Emperor Gaul, that's his name.
Dave But Cooler has joined the
hello, thank you for the follow. I appreciate it. Thank you.
To him,
Dave But Cooler, hello.
Such barbaric individuals is unfortunately a pointless waste of time that could be better spent acquiring even more important pieces of history.
I was joking. Yeah,
so
it's fine.
He takes what he wants and moves on to his next pursuit.
Welcome. We're learning about Trazyn. I don't know. Everyone pronounces it different.
Along the way, Trazyn's enemies see him as a monster, a tyrant come to unleash not just legions of Necron soldiers, but also a bizarre menagerie of monsters and aliens. Sometimes even their own soldiers that have been mind-shackled to him. Trazyn's heard what they call him: a thief, a monster, an abomination, a tyrant, and thousands of other hurtful names. And he understands why they would fling such unwarranted insults at him. I mean, really, he gets it.
Dude,
but from
he looks
his
they all look
he's
cool.
the most altruistic person in the entire galaxy. It's just
What does altruistic mean? Listen, I know I'm supposed to know English, but I don't. I don't know so many words. I'm sorry. What does altruistic mean?
Fortunate that everyone else is too primitive to understand that. The relics that Trazyn has stored in his galleries are inconceivable.
Not Trazyn.
From ancient weaponry thought lost millions of years ago during the War in Heaven, to entire regiments of guardsmen and space marines, locked in stasis for all time. And speaking of
opposite of egotistical, what does egotistical mean?
Galleries. To understand Trazyn, we need to understand the world that he calls
doing
home,
things for the greater good. Oh, okay.
The things that Trazyn has taken and stored in his
Warhammer.
galleries
It's Warhammer.
are inconceivable. From ancient weaponry thought lost millions of years ago during the War in Heaven, to entire regiments of guardsmen.
The War in Heaven was was when the Necrons sealed the gods in Pokeballs, right?
And space marines, locked in stasis for all time.
Oh, a
And
selfish
speaking of those
person.
galleries,
Okay.
we need to talk
Egotistical.
about the world that Trazyn calls home. As we've established, Trazyn is a particularly eccentric individual, so we should expect no less from his kingdom.
The Catan, yeah, the Catan.
We didn't really know too much about
Forgot
it,
their
other
names.
than it was the place where Trazyn stored his vast collection. But with Book 2 of the Fabius Bile trilogy, we finally got a decent
Fabius
look at this
Bile.
place. So first and foremost, even though I'm going to refer to it as a planet from time to time,
It's not?
Solemnace really isn't a planet. It's an artificial construct, the world's atmosphere, consisting of lashing winds and toxic clouds. But for the most part, seems as though it's
was
left
this
completely
crook? Not today, because I don't
almost
got
as
too
if
much
despite
time,
being
and I still
a
want to play in
cold,
Stars
dead
in Time.
husk, is welcoming to visitors.
But I'll add it to the
If
list.
one was to descend to the planet's surface, they would see nothing but silvery sand dunes stretched out as far as the eye.
That's just a plains from Magic the Gathering. There's no way. That looks like straight up just the plains.
Could see. There are no ruins,
Those who've played Magic will
vegetation,
know.
or any signs of life at all. If you were to pick up a handful of the sand and let it dribble through your fingers, you would notice
whimsical
that it's
wizard
not sand
name.
At all. Each individual
Altruistic.
speck is a micro.
Does a little bit, doesn't it?
So tiny that as they fell through your fingers, the wind would catch them and carry them off to a new destination. When Fabius Bile did this, he could have sworn he saw a skeletal face leering back at him in the cloud of nanomachines, almost as if whoever made this place had a pretty interesting sense of humor. The machines act as trillions of minuscule solar cells, receiving transferred
Solar
energy from a
cells.
massively powerful star the entire world is formed around. And the toxic gases and winds are a byproduct of the tiny machine's synthetic photosynthesis. It's an impossible place that, even to a great and terrible
Looks so
mind like
cool.
the one owned by Fabius Bile, it makes absolutely no sense. Its technology is just on a completely different scale. When Fabius Bile journeyed to this world,
That's
him and his
so
followers were trying to
cool.
figure out how to get inside of it. They had worked out a system where if they used their ship's signal jammers, they might be able to interfere with the nanomachines. But before they could put their plan into action, the nanomachines directly beneath their feet
Look at
all
that,
hardened
dude.
together into a large circular platform.
I'm so
The platform then
invested,
began
I'm
to
sorry,
descend
I'm not talking
downwards,
much.
creating a massive tunnel through the dunes. Once they finally broke free from the undulating mass of nanomachines, what they saw was pretty spectacular. And I'm gonna read a passage from the book that
Look at
describes
this. This looks like
exactly
something out of Subnautica. This is like one of the alien alien bases. I think you could call them. Like something out of Subnautica. The green really reminds me of it. It looks so cool.
Fabius looked around in growing wonder. Jade lumens flickered to life across the vast space that they now found themselves in. In the emerald radiance, Fabius saw that their platform was one among hundreds, each set equidistant from the others and at varying heights,
Equidistant.
mounted atop deceptively thin towers of smooth stone and
Precursor
featureless
alien
metal.
bases, yeah.
Instinctively, he
Yeah,
activated
those
the
ones,
armor's
the
augers,
precursors.
trying to get a sensor map of his surroundings.
I didn't
Each
know
of
their
the
names.
platforms was connected by a single walkway to the edge of an immense circular tier. There were thousands of tiers, each rising to impossible heights
Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 subs.
and descending to
They are simps. Confirmed.
imperceptible depths, all along the vertical curve of what could only be a colossal sphere. Each of the tiers was occupied by what appeared to be a labyrinth of prismatic galleries, winding back into the heart of the vast structure. And all were slowly, almost imperceptibly, moving, rotating, the way a world might
What?
rotate in its place in the firmament. He murmured in awe despite himself. Questions sped across the surface of his mind, one after the next.
Wavelength.
This place was nothing
Wavelength.
so much as a gargantuan orrery built around a caged power
Orrery?
source
What
of
is orrery? A gigantic orrery.
incalculable potency,
I was right.
he said, thumping the ramp of the gunship with the ferrule of his scepter. The sound echoed loudly in the silence.
It's a Dyson sphere.
Ding. Oh, a Dyson sphere. Oh, wait, I know what those are. Those are like those are like in science fiction. You've seen a lot of. It's like theoretically possible. I'm pretty sure it's like almost. Think of like if we got the sun and put around the sun like a bunch of solar panels to harness its energy. That's pretty much what a Dyson sphere is. That's so cool.
Yes, that it has been here for some time, longer than humanity has prowled the stars. In certain Eldari text, it speaks of a great war in heaven. Most of it is allegorical nonsense, as can be expected of such a culture. But if you were to compare it to other Xenos records, there are hints. Star gods and cannibal suns, warp spawn
Oh, it's
and
the gods.
soulless legions that were more monstrous than any abominable intelligence.
Abominable
Machines that devoured
intelligence.
entire worlds for fuel. And vampiric entities that drained the energy from stars. Cannons that could split reality with a single
Sun harvesting.
shot.
Fabius smiled.
A war that laid waste to every galaxy in the universe. A war our existence has yet to recover from.
Is he talking about the war in
Glorious to
heaven?
think of it, isn't it?
Palos grunted.
If it's the truth.
Hold on, give me a
What
second on
is
chat.
truth?
Hold on.
But the perception of fact.
The fabled prismatic galleries of Solemnace.
So cool. Wait, they were talking about the war in heaven, right? Dyson Sphere is energy catching device built around the sun to harvest its energy. Yeah. It's basically like billions of solar panels just to catch the sun's energy. But it's theoretically possible to make one.
Are packed full of some of the galaxy's most valuable and
It's seen a lot in
historically
science
relevant
fiction.
artifacts from across space and time. However, it doesn't contain just physical objects, but potentially billions of living individuals as well. Whether they be figures of historical importance or entire battles, each participant frozen in time and snatched away to be stored in Trazyn's mighty collection. He likes to walk amongst his exhibits,
that's
ducking underneath
cool.
older shells frozen in the air, and making minor adjustments to cloaks billowing in the wind, moving soldiers around ever so slightly to truly capture the emotional impact of a battle. He's not just a history nerd, but also fancies himself a great storyteller, making sure his exhibits don't just tell the historical
Wait, that's
facts.
so cool. Theoretically, yes, but it's gonna take like 5 lifetimes to finish it. Oh yeah, no, it would take forever. Dude, that's so cool. So he captures like whole battles in Pokeballs. That's
but also
cool.
tell a great story and capture the emotion of the battle. Unfortunately, sometimes these
diorama
ideas
on a
conflict with one
whole-
another, and he
on a
has to
whole
make
planet.
concessions. If, say, for example, a soldier of historical importance is in the collection, and he's trying to represent their last stand, if the captured individual is missing an arm, but the moment he's trying to depict happened before he lost the limb, Trazyn has no problem with taking an arm from another less important specimen and reattaching it to them to better capture the moment. Maybe his exhibit
What?
is supposed to feature 1,000 guardsmen
messed up,
fighting off
but that's
against a
cool.
horde of orcs.
Awesome, so they never
But he was
die.
only
No, it
able
stopped them. So like they're like a part of history. That was what it means.
to capture 500 of them. In this case,
That's
he
what
may
they never
grab
die. He doesn't
another
care about 'em.
500 from a different
Oh, I mean-
gallery to fill out the ranks.
Kinda.
Even if those soldiers came from a completely different planet and time period. He may even grab some historically inaccurate outfits for the implanted guardsmen, if it matches the original exhibit, balancing historical accuracy, limited supplies, and a good story, all of which can prove to be a pretty difficult task, but
In
it's one that
memory?
he is wholly dedicated to. And when you
That's
love what
cool,
you do,
though.
it
That's
never
so
really
cool.
feels like work. Some of his treasures include an ossified husk of an enslaver and the fabled Wraithbone Choir of the Altanzar craft world, the preserved head of the
I don't know
Ecclesiarch
what
Sebastian
those
Thor,
are.
who took over after Van Dyer's reign of blood, a library of written documents said to be so vast it rivals even the fabled Black Library of the Eldari, the world spirit of an Exodite
What is
Eldar.
that? I don't know what any of those are.
Regiments from just about every different Astromilitarum world, artifacts from the Necron tier's ancient past during the times of flesh, Astartes from various different
From the times of flesh, dude, that is so giga old.
chapters and legions.
Holy.
Many of those individuals predating the Horus Heresy, an entire Tyranid splinter fleet, which we'll get
Oh, Horus Heresy mentioned. I know that. I know that one. I've heard that one before.
into a little bit
Hello,
later.
Unhonored.
A preserved and possibly
hi.
still alive Krork, complete with its
Krork.
impossibly advanced armor, an intact Catan shard, a damaged but still functioning webway portal, a troop of Harlequins, and a massive stock of uncorrupted Emperor's Children gene seed. Although admittedly, he ended up trading this away to Fabius Bile for something far more unique, a perfect clone of the Primarch Fulgrim. Okay, so I want to take a second to really highlight that one. A perfect, uncorrupted clone of the Primarch Fulgrim, complete with all of his memories and previous honor intact from before he was corrupted by Slaanesh. This is possibly one of the biggest additions to the lore in the last 5 years, and could be the beginning of one of 40K's most memorable storylines, the redemption of Fulgrim and the Emperor's Children. Can you imagine what it would look like if out of all of the Primarchs to return next, it was Fulgrim as a loyalist? What implications could this have for the future of mankind?
Your DMs? I'm not checking my DMs right now.
Pilgrim returned to stand beside Gilliman and lead the Imperium against chaos.
I'll do it
what would
later.
it mean for the Emperor's children that followed him? The implications are massive, to say the least.
Massive? Lord.
That being said, if I know anything about Trazyn, it's that he isn't going to just give away a mint condition 2nd edition collectible. So we're probably never going to find out. The larger his collection grows, the more ambitious Trazyn becomes, often setting up
Excuse me.
displays for future acquisitions. Now, one particular exhibit of note is a resplendent golden throne room, waiting for the day when he manages to obtain the centerpiece of his human exhibit and the crown jewel
That was
of
like
his
a
entire
9 out of that was like a 9
Now,
out
how
of
he's
10.
going to manage to break into the Imperial Palace to steal the Emperor of Mankind is
He wants to steal the Emperor. He wants to steal the... Bro, no way, dude. That's cool.
something that, admittedly, he hasn't quite worked out the details on. But he's working on it.
Oh.
It seems like out of all of the marvelous
he
oddities
wants to
and
steal the whole Emperor. He will... No, that is a bad idea.
antiques that Trazyn has managed to collect, the one thing he hasn't been able
David's
to
out of 6
obtain
Johns.
is a friend.
That's pretty good.
Oh,
I'll
wait,
take it.
no, never mind. He captured one of those too. In the short story, The War in the Museum, Trazyn is attempting to catalog a splinter hive fleet that he managed to capture. One of the specimens in the collection, a lictor,
That's called
escape and
kidnapping.
starts rampaging through his galleries.
Like, the thing is, like, if he does capture the Emperor, like, that's it. Like, he has... How many? I don't even know how many they would be, dude. Like, he would have, like... Come on, at least half of the observable universe after his
Trazyn inevitably tried to capture it himself after his Lich Guard proved to be ineffective, resulting in the lictor getting the jump on him and ripping his head off. After he wakes up in a new body, he decides that it might be for the best if he gets another expert to help him handle the situation. So he goes to one of his exhibits on the Adeptus Mechanicus and releases a Magos Biologus from stasis. Trazyn greets him like he would an old friend. The Magos requests that next time Trazyn puts him in stasis that he leave him conscious, and Trazyn tells him that that's a really bad idea. He would definitely go insane not being able to move for 100 years. The Magos rebuttals this, informing him that the amount he could accomplish in silent contemplation for a century would be worth it. The story doesn't really specify much about their relationship, but they greet each other like old colleagues, each wholly driven by the pursuit of knowledge. The Magos specializes in
such a bad idea, though.
And apparently they've worked out some form of deal where everything that he learns through his dissections, Trazyn will package and send back to the Mechanicus in exchange for him staying here on Solemnace. Over the course of the story, the Hive Tyrant that Trazyn was attempting to dehydrate and place at the center of the exhibit pulses out its synaptic link and starts to awaken all of the other Tyranids, something the Magos had specifically warned him about. And trying to put a living Hive Tyrant on display was, to put it mildly, a really stupid idea. A notion that Trazyn quickly dismissed. There's a really interesting scene
dismissed.
In the book
I don't care.
We get to see what it's like.
It looks cool.
Of some
Yeah, Trazyn's like, okay, yeah, this is a very bad idea. You know, he could just wake up all of the other Tyranids. You know, maybe let's not do that. No, it looks cool. Shut up.
Of his exhibits.
I don't care. It looks cool.
Magos, as well as a pair of Sisters of Battle that have been mind-shackled to him.
There's a battle mentioned.
And are sailing across the exhibits as all of the Tyranids start to wake back up. Each of the galleries underneath them is enormous, and if you didn't know what you were actually looking at, they would each look like a different war-torn battlefield from across the galaxy, with the exception that at each of their borders was a half-mile-tall steel wall that separated all of them. When the command barge flies above them, we get to see that each one is a completely different exhibit with a totally different setting. One being a bombarded cityscape, while another is a frozen tundra. As he flies higher into the air, you can see that there are countless other walled-off exhibits just like these. As the Tyranids begin to rampage through the other galleries, the skimmercraft approaches a giant cylindrical tower. It's described as a giant library, multiple rectangular-shaped shelves, each containing a different
almost have another tier list. Oh, good for you.
One has a group of guardsmen fighting off against the orcs, while another depicts a clash between space marines of the Horus Heresy era. Every now and then, 40K can get a little bit meta.
Dude, that's so
and this tower sounds an awful lot like many of the display cases some serious Warhammer collectors may have in their own homes. I personally have one myself in the studio where I record all of my...
Okay, if that's actually true, that's awesome. If that were actually true, that would be really cool. Trazyn is just like meta. He's just like a player.
Videos. But
he's just like a guy that has Warhammer stuff.
Despite having spent his life as a historian and not as a
I am not ranking every Lego piece. You can go shove it up here.
Trazyn is no slouch in combat. Like all Necrons,
that is very
he is
true.
gifted with the living metal body of necrodermis that is able to repair itself from practically any injury. If his body does receive catastrophic damage that is too much to be repaired, he can immediately transfer his consciousness into a surrogate, whether that surrogate be nearby or all the way across the galaxy. If he needs to stay wherever he's at, he can also transfer his consciousness to pretty much any other Necron under his control, allowing him to jump back and forth between different Necron bodies.
So he's just never gonna die.
Death each and every jump. His weapon of choice is a staff known as the Empathic Obliterator, said to contain technology designed by the Old Ones themselves. It has an inbuilt resurrection orb and fires beams of psionic energy. The technology at Trazyn's
of course it does. You know, why wouldn't it?
Disposal is frankly remarkable.
Undertale OST tier list? I do that.
In dimensional pockets to move great distances.
There are over 1,000 Lego, brother. I think there's a lot more than 1,000 Legos.
With the wave of his hand, can emit a stasis field that, at one point in the Infinite and the Divine, stops a 6-ton stone hammer that was about to destroy him, locking it in place with a flick of his wrist. He didn't even stop walking to take a second to look at it, waving it off like one would a fly. Possibly his most iconic weaponry is a combination of inventions known as Tesseract Labyrinths and mind-shackle scarabs. The mind-shackles are basically a tiny specialized version of the canoptic scarabs that the Necrons use to control other alien species. Once unleashed, the scarabs will burrow themselves into the victim's head and interfere with their cerebral functions. They aren't always activated right away. In fact, one of their primary uses is to stay dormant for years at a time before receiving a signal from the scarab's commander to activate. On one hand, the victim could become a full-blown...
That's from Magic. That's the Diabolic Tutor. I have that card. I actually have that card like in one of my decks. That's Diabolic Tutor.
Sleeper agent. Or it might be a lot more subtle. The scarabs may just insert an idea here or there to slowly begin to manipulate the target into taking courses of action.
There's so many Lego series.
To the Necrons. In more extreme examples,
doesn't make it any better.
Control the victim. It makes them into a puppet that can be turned into attacking their own comrades, surrendering important information, or even just killing themselves. Cranking up the control like this has its drawbacks and can cause the tiny scarabs to overload after only a few minutes. Trazyn tends to not utilize them in this way. Most of the examples we have of him mind-shackling humans show that he only makes it so they can't attack him, choosing to instead engage in dialogue and striking a bargain. He'd rather make them into allies of convenience rather than just outright dominating their minds. Besides,
that makes
finds
sense.
That his captives tend to fight back against his enemies just fine if he deploys them into an immediately dangerous situation. The second device that he uses is what is known as a Tesseract Labyrinth. They take the form of a small glowing cube, about the size of a human fist. But the reality is that they contain within them a pocket dimension, a prison with which the Necrons can store anything from a single person to an entire army. These are the devices that the Necrons use to store intact Catan shards, which are incredibly powerful when deployed into battle. Wherever Trazyn goes, he brings an entire...
So they just have summons. What? He has summons? That's so cool.
Collection of these things with him, each one containing a different monster or regiment of soldiers. So at any given time, he's basically walking around with an entire army that he can deploy out of nowhere. This is why everybody jokes that he's the ultimate Pokemon master.
Yeah, literally.
Even though he's incredibly powerful, Trazyn does have his weaknesses.
He has like the, if anyone's ever played Final Fantasy 15, where you're like fighting occasionally, like one of the gods will just come along and just help you out. That's what this guy has, but it's like on command.
He tends to get hyperfixated on things he finds interesting. And as somebody with the ADHD, I can totally relate to that. When this happens, his circumspection protocols tend to be diminished. And when it comes to warp sorcery in particular, it is said that he is like a deaf man at the dinner table, able to make out words through ambient sounds and lip reading, but not able to even notice the voices of any participants he's not directly focused on. As I mentioned before, he's not really a warrior at heart. He's a man of science and history, but you wouldn't exactly know that by watching him fight. There's a pretty great example of this in The Infinite and the Divine, where at one point Trazyn and Orikan come face to face and end up locked in combat. Both participants move so quickly that their bodies appear as metallic blurs that are impossible for unaugmented human eyes to track, their machine minds processing information at lightning speed. Orikan is able to glimpse into the future and examines a million different possible destinies to determine the specific microsecond he needs to swing to deliver a killing blow. While simultaneously, Trazyn's mind will jump to a new body the second Orikan's blade impacts him, and in the exact same second, the new surrogate body is already charging back into his foe, a blow aimed at his head. This battle seems absolutely insane, but the narrator of the story takes a second to remind us of something very important.
Yeah.
He basically says, listen, what you're hearing described is definitely remarkable. The fight of the millennia. Two superhuman individuals buffed to obscene levels by ancient technology and techno-sorcery.
Awesome.
But bear in mind,
all of the art shown here as well, like all of the art here as well is looks awesome.
This battle would be an unbelievable embarrassment. We as the audience are basically watching two metallic gods clash with one another.
Yeah.
But the narrator is here to remind us that the reality of this situation is it's basically just two angry old men hitting each other with their canes.
But frankly, I don't give a damn. And I'll tell you this, only one of us is gonna walk out of here alive.
Bring it on!
What? Okay, so lore accurate Warhammer. This is also really loud. Lore accurate fight. Okay, so cool. So they're not at their primes. This is so long.
I fucking love this book so much. I also really don't want to spoil it for you, so if you like Trazyn, if you like the Necrons, definitely check it out.
Oh, I will, for sure. That's
their individual
cool.
histories during the times of flesh are mostly lost to time. We're only ever given brief glimpses into who they used to be through fractured and distorted memory code. It's pretty common for Necrons to wake up with their minds in complete shambles, some being so far gone that they can't awaken at all. So that
Wait, so what he's saying is like, they're not in their prime? Is that what he's saying? Cause so like they're actually really slow? Is that what he's saying? Time to sleep. Bye-bye. Unhonored.
Most of these glimpses we get into their past are not inherently trustworthy.
Neither. I don't want to do any of them.
What he used to look like. Every now and then his mechanical mind reconstructs an image, or at least what he believes to be an image for about a microsecond.
I'll do that later.
These are images of things he saw during those times. Looking down at his curled fingers around a stylus,
my thing open.
or dark pupils staring back at him from a burnished mirror. As soon as his mind tries to focus on it, it's gone. The memories of the war in heaven, though, are a bit clearer. He remembers the Titanic
Dude, the war in
clash,
heaven looks so
armies of metal
cool.
marching with dire purpose into the fracturing lines of the reptilian old ones.
Look
We know that
at
in life he was
that.
the
The
archivist of
Catan,
the
dude.
Nihic dynasty, and was a prominent member in their courts. Even all the way back then, he had a deep-seated rivalry with Orikan. One, a master historian who sought to learn the secrets of the past, and the other, a chronomancer who sought to divine the future. They were polar opposites and contentious rivals. Now, we're not given an exact time frame on when exactly he emerged from stasis. The original theory that was popular amongst Necron fans was that after the war in heaven, Trazyn simply never went to sleep. But in the Infinite and the Divine, it tells us that he simply woke up earlier, operating Solemnace alone at first, and then with a skeleton crew of cryptex that he had forced out of stasis one by one. At one point, Trazyn claimed that he had been active around the time of the Great Crusade, which would place his time of awakening at least 12,000 years ago. Now, he certainly could be lying about this fact, but considering that he has numerous relics from around this time period, it would lead credence to his claim, meaning that my man has been lurking in the shadows off-screen, snatching up relics and peoples he finds interesting for a very long time. Now, most recently, 40K's Mad Collector actually assisted the Imperium
the immortal
defending
thief
Cadia against the 13th Black Crusade. Sorta. In the 41st millennium, Trazyn's expeditions take him all the way across the galaxy
40K?
and have seen him take part in many of 40K's most important events. For example, Trazyn was one of the first to know of the coming 13th Black Crusade. This was due to one of the artifacts in his gallery, the Bell of St. Cristal, suddenly ringing out of nowhere after having laid silent for millennia, each and every toll sending out waves of crippling destruction through his exhibits. After the 13th chime, it suddenly fell silent, and Trazyn pondered what it could all mean, and what he should do with the relic.
The unlucky number.
Because he feared that it may go off again in the future without warning. And also, possibly to vent a little bit of his frustration, Trazyn took the bell and hurled it into the webway, where he hoped it would annoy the Eldar as much as it had him. He's kinda petty like that. Determined to find answers, Trazyn would journey to the crown world of the Oriskar dynasty,
They just threw it away?
home of the Celestial Orrery, a holographic map of the entire galaxy, and one of the most powerful artifacts in existence. These guys weren't too happy to see him, as Trazyn's pursuit of ancient relics is not just limited to non-Necron
or not Freddy Fazbear. He looks like
Apparently,
Springtrap.
they struck a deal, because he was permitted audience with the Orrery.
Come back.
When he viewed the galaxy represented in holographic form,
Swords,
he noticed a crimson-red
Stormhawks,
reflection growing underneath it.
Crimson Paladins, Blood Angels. Do I recognize any of them? Zvora. Tiger's Argent. Celestial Guard. Salamanders. White Panthers. Black Templars. Oh, dude, that's so cool. All of the names are Star Dragons, bro. They're so cool. Doom Legion. So cool.
Source of the corruption
it's so
the Eye
cool.
of Terror.
Ultramarines.
He had never personally ventured to, known as Cadia. He didn't really see much value in this place, but figured on one hand he may be able to go there and play the role of its savior, and on the other, if he got bored, there might be some fun trinkets for him to collect. He eventually made his way to the planet and ended up meeting with Belisarius Cawl, who was attempting to understand the nexus of Blackstone beneath Cadia. When Trazyn appeared before him, Cawl almost cut him down on sight. He was a Xenos abomination, a living machine that was blasphemous to the Omnissiah. Trazyn informed him that if he killed him, he would just awaken somewhere else, so it didn't really matter. But he may be able to help him understand the Matrix. Chaos destroying the galaxy, and more importantly, all of its artifacts.
I've never seen any of the Matrix movies.
That would interfere with his ultimate goals. It was an uneasy partnership, to say the least. Cawl expected Trazyn to stab him in the back as soon as he had the opportunity. And if he was being honest with himself, Trazyn didn't exactly know whether or not he would do that himself. He mostly came here out of curiosity and boredom. Under Trazyn's instructions, Cawl interfaced with the Nexus, trying to get it to activate. Well, Trazyn ended up holding off against the Despoiler and his legion of Chaos Space Marines.
Look at that.
He did this by deploying one of the Tesseract Vaults, which contained an entire army of Imperial warriors, each one plucked from across time. There were Space Marines that, from their perspective only mere moments ago, were in the middle of the Horus Heresy, while some of the Guard regiments and Dreadnoughts had only been added to the collection within recent years. There was a lone Custodian warrior and an entire regiment of the Vostroyan Firstborn. Apparently, even the famous Inquisitor Katarina Greyfax had been in his collection as well. Needless to say, many of these warriors were incredibly confused by the sudden change of scenery, and many more were suffering the effects of stasis sickness. But when you awaken to the sound of bolter fire and charging Chaos Space Marines, the Imperium tends to reorganize and snap into battle formations pretty quickly. It was around this point that Trazyn decided that the hero life wasn't exactly his thing, so he left the fighting to the surprise reinforcements. So what did Trazyn do during the rest of his stay on the war-torn planet of Cadia? Did he present himself as a savior figure to the other Imperial fighters? Was he instrumental in pushing back chaos? Did he even make an attempt to save this world? Nah, he saw the writing on the wall, that the battle was lost and he had grown bored of being a hero anyways. So he lurked in the shadows, looking for some kind of prize to take home with him. There were so many choices.
One of the guns.
So much history was being written this day, and he only had one empty Tesseract labyrinth with him. His prize would eventually come in the form of Castellan Creed, the supreme commander of Cadia's military forces, who had decided to stay behind and die with dignity. Determined to make one last effort and take a few traitors down with him, Trazyn found him bleeding out in the swirling dust and told him this need not be your end. Eternity awaits, before trapping him in the labyrinth. He then teleported back to his world with his prize.
Yeah, so he's just Ash
Trazyn
Ketchum.
wasn't really sure if he was a hero or a thief, even though he had been called the latter hundreds of times in the past. In the act of liberating the Supreme Commander and technically saving his life, he had somehow found a way to be both. The fact that Cadia was ultimately destroyed, and the Eye of Terror would end up spreading its influence across the galaxy, to him,
what is the Eye of Terror?
More than an unnecessary footnote on a great story.
It's really no surprise that Trazyn is such a beloved character. He's hilarious, compelling,
just a collector with the ADHD.
Cover a pretty wide range of emotions. We love laughing at his crazy antics and general dickishness that tends to run in stark contrast to the super serious tone of 40K. But there's also a deep sadness with Trazyn. For the most part, he's completely alone, a being out of time. who's driven forward only by his mission. It's crazy to think that before 5th edition 40k, the Necrons really didn't have a personality other than kill all humans. And the even crazier thing is that we owe his creation to one of the most contentious literary figures in all of Warhammer. I'm talking about Matt Ward, the author of the Necron's 5th edition Codex. Now, I'm not gonna do a whole thing on him here because honestly, that's a video in its own right. But if you're not familiar with him, just know that he made a lot of changes to the lore that old school Warhammer fans absolutely hated. And whether right or wrong, they tend to blame him for pretty much all of 40k's problems. Now, I would never dare
really
to
that
speak for
bad?
the entire community, so I can only speak for myself here. But Mr. Ward, if you're watching this video, I just want you to know that I forgive you for all of the Ultramarines and Grey Knights nonsense. What you did with the Necrons, and specifically Trazyn,
what did he do?
Remarkable. So thank you for giving us such an awesome character. But what do you guys think? Is Trazyn the best character in all of 40k? Or is there somebody that you think is a lot cool?
I'm not gonna lie.
What's an underrated character that you think I should make a video on? And
all of the Sisters of Battle.
What do you think about that whole Fulgrim thing? Do you think we're actually gonna get a loyalist Fulgrim? Or do you think that plot line is kind of dead in the water?
I don't know what to think.
Thanks to everybody who watched this video all the way through. It really helps my channel out, and it means the world to me.
Hey, no problem, man.
If you like content like this, go ahead and like and subscribe. And hit the bell if you want to be notified when I post another video. Big thank you to all my patrons that support my channel and make all of this possible. And with all that out of the way, I'll catch y'all in the next.
Oh, dude, that was cool. That was cool. That was awesome. That made me really tired though. That was awesome, dude. That was really cool. So Trazyn, he was really cool, dude. I enjoyed that. That was awesome. That was really cool.